Hello again, friends. Eric Pearson here with another gaming demonstration. It's been a little while since I've recorded a gaming video, so before I begin, I'd like to extend my heartiest welcome to those who have subscribed to my channel since my last video. So once again, welcome and thank you. Hope you like what you see. I've been inspired by certain current events to return to this game from a few years ago called Plague Incorporated. This is a simulation of the progression of a disease. Your goal in this game is to cultivate a disease and use it to either conquer or destroy humanity. Now, this game was regarded as a potentially valuable teaching tool about the spread of disease. The creators at Endemic Creations were actually asked by the United States Centers for Disease Control, or CDC, to come talk about how games like this could be used as teaching tools. So, to Endemic, I give a lot of respect. So, there's more that I want to say, but I want to get started here. So, I'm going to go for a single-player game, but I'm going to do one of the official scenarios separate from the main game. The answer or reason why will become clear in a moment. One of the potential scenarios you can play is this one: science denial. People no longer believe in science. Popular opinion has shifted against objective truth and toward alternative facts. But when a terrifying new plague is unleashed, ginkgo tree extract, healing crystals, and snake oil can only do so much. Can the exiled experts save the world? Well, we'll find out. So, next we have to choose the type of disease we're going to simulate. We can do bacteria, virus, fungus, parasite, prion, nanovirus, or bioweapon. I'm going to go with virus. That's a good all-rounder. So I will click continue. There are certain buffs to your disease's abilities. You unlock a new potential buff every time you win a scenario in the main game. So I've got certain things like cytochrome surge to get more DNA faster, genetic mimic to make my plague hard to cure, aerocyte to increase the chance of the plague spreading by through the air. Zerophile gives a bonus to spreading in dry, arid climates. Ionized helixes bonus DNA if I ever want to devolve for any reason. So, that all said, let's get started. I'm going to choose a game difficulty of normal. That's good enough. And I can name my plague. Now, I decided in a previous playthrough to go through and call it ignorance, but you know, we've seen diseases before like H1N1. We see these combinations of letters and numbers, so let's have a little bit of fun. We'll call it the 1GN0R-4NCE. Let's channel a little leet speak here. Okay, enough fooling around, let's get started. Okay, welcome to the science denial scenario. Trust in science has eroded worldwide. Flat earther theories, climate change denial, and anti-vaccine campaigns are taking the world by storm. Choose a starting country. Global research budgets have been slashed, but not everyone has given up on science. Hunt down humanity's brightest minds before they can stop you. Okay, so here's our world map. I have to pick a place for my disease to start. Well, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Well, I'm going to borrow a page from the real world. In 1998, there was a study published in a medical journal of the United Kingdom called The Lancet. One Dr. Andrew Wakefield stated in his study that there was a suggested link between the measles, mumps, rubella, or MMR vaccine and autism in children. And it was published in the UK first, and it got a lot of attention. So I'm sorry, with with my kindest regrets to J.K. Rowling, to John Cleese, and the royal family. Tag, you're it. Ignorance begins. It has infected its first human, weak but used to cold temperatures. It must evolve using DNA points to infect more people. Down here is my indicator of DNA points. That is the currency that I will spend in order to evolve my disease's abilities. So I'm going to push this button here. It is a virus. It randomly mutates rapidly and can be hard to control. It costs DNA points to devolve. So let's zoom out a bit. So when that study was published in 1998, it generated a lot of attention from the public and also from the scientific community. There were follow-up studies to check the accuracy of Dr. Wakefield's statements. These studies were performed by entities such as the Centers for Disease Control in the United States, the U.S. National Academy of Sciences, the American Association of Pediatrics, the National Health Service of the United Kingdom. Now it says here that ignorance begins to spread. It will grow exponentially. You control the plague indirectly by evolving it, which I'll get to in a minute. So anyway, all of these additional follow-on studies were performed by multiple very venerated scientific organizations, and nobody else could replicate Dr. Wakefield's findings. And on top of that, further investigation into Dr. Wakefield's research determined that his methodology was a tad dubious, and he also committed some ethical breaches to get his data. I'll get to that in a minute. Meanwhile, we've developed a coughing symptom. We've mutated and developed the coughing symptom without using DNA points. Anyway, the end result is that Dr. Wakefield's research was debunked. A full retraction was issued by The Lancet, which was the original publishing journal. It was completely debunked and retracted in the year 2010. That was 9 years ago. And yet a lot of people point to this one fraudulent study as being a justification for not vaccinating themselves or their children against diseases like measles, mumps, rubella. And lo and behold, hang on, super science utopia in South Africa. Moving against popular global opinion, South Africa has invited scientists from around the world to come and work at fully funded super science cities. Okay. Anyway, well, lo and behold, measles is now making something of a comeback in various parts of the world. In the United States, we have about 600 cases of the disease in 22 states. And there are 6 areas of the United States that are currently suffering outbreaks, including downstate New York, Michigan, and California. So now we've developed the Rash Symptom. And keep in mind, I haven't even spent any DNA points yet. I'll get to that in a minute. So I wanted to demonstrate this game to show what a global pandemic of a given disease would look like if in a scenario where people just didn't believe in vaccinations. And I have to say, it's an ugly, ugly thing. If we come back around to the real world, I can point to some examples of what can happen. My mother contracted polio when she was a child. This was in a time before the polio vaccine existed. And this was a disease that spread rapidly back then. And a lot of children were killed. A lot of children were left with severe physical handicaps. Now, my mother contracted the disease, thankfully recovered from it, and she's had a very mobile and active life. But now we're learning that the long-term effects of a prior polio infection are really coming home to roost. My mother's nervous system has been working double time all of this time in order to keep going. And the long-term damage is now manifesting in pain, muscle weakness, and other various types of neurological misfires, especially those relating to her heart. None of this is a particularly pleasant concept. So it's an ugly situation, and for those folks who say, I don't want to vaccinate my kids against things like measles, mumps, rubella, etc., how I wish I could introduce them to my mother. My opinion, I own it. Now, meanwhile, we're growing here in the United Kingdom, but we haven't spread anywhere else. But let's see what happens if I actually spend some of my accumulated DNA points to evolve. For example, if I go to transmission and I evolve my ability to spread through the air and my ability to spread through water, and let's develop the ability to spread through contact with blood, and how about insects while we're at it? Let's see what happens there. Ignorance spreads to Central America. Your disease has taken an important step in becoming a plague. When a new country is infected, pop the red bubble to get bonus DNA, like so. Boop. There we go. So now we're in Central America. And now we've mutated to develop anemia. Let me show you our symptoms interface. So I can spend points to evolve or devolve symptoms as I see fit. We have coughing, which gives a bonus to infectivity. We have a rash, which slightly increases infectivity. And we also have over here anemia, which is a decrease in red blood cells, which can lead to hypoxia in the organs. So I'm probably going to guess that's a slight bonus to severity. I don't think we're to the point where we're lethal yet, but give it time. Now we're into the thousands infected in the United Kingdom. Other examples I can point to is how bad some of these diseases can be. Okay, people talk about the measles, and they say, well, what's so bad about that? You just feel sick for a bit and you got spots, right? Well, wrong. Because measles can, in some cases, be fatal. Examples. Famed British author Roald Dahl lost his 6-year-old daughter to measles. And he later on wrote a passionate essay exhorting people to vaccinate themselves and their children. This current outbreak that we have, there was a flight attendant from Israel, 43 years old. Last I read, she was in a coma from encephalitis, because that's a potential complication of measles. And it looks like we're spreading to Russia now. Yep. Here we go. And it looks like we've spread to South Africa and New Zealand. And Saudi Arabia and France. South America, India, Canada, China, Japan. From my own experience, when I was about 6 years old, I caught chickenpox from a neighbor. And again, this was in a time before chickenpox existed. And I have read, once in a blue moon, chickenpox can kill. But even if it doesn't kill, once you have it, okay, technically you're immune from getting actual chickenpox again. but because you had that, you were at higher risk later in life of developing shingles. And I've already had shingles as well, and it's not fun. My right ear started to swell angrily, and it's not quite the same shape as it once was. And I'm lucky it didn't do worse to me, but that was a pretty ugly thing to go through. So if we look at our view of the world here, we have a Festival of Love in New Zealand. Fans praise the replacement for International Kissing Day. Critics question hygiene standards. And currently we're at 38 million infected with about 4,500 dead. So apparently this disease is killing people. And it is also spreading. In fact, let's give a few more buffs to our infectivity. Let's further develop infection by air, transmission ability by water, and let's turn ourselves into an extreme bioaerosol. There we go. Now we've spread to Finland. Rumors of mysterious illness in the UK. Now we're really spreading, as you can see. We've got a real foothold in Russia. And according to this, we're more infectious than HIV. Each one of these bubbles that I'm popping is another hotspot where it's really taken hold. We've hit Greenland, we've hit Bolivia. Now it looks like Germany, the Philippines. Now more of Africa, more of South America, Madagascar, now Northern Africa. The United Kingdom has now shut down its airports. Time will tell if this will work. Now more infectious than the common cold. That's another thing. In the study of epidemics, what they call epidemiology, there's a concept that people talk about called the basic reproduction rate, or R0, of a disease. And it's a basic guideline of how many other people an infected individual could pass the disease to. The common cold has an R0 of around 1 or 2. Polio, at its worst, had a R0 of 5 to 7. Measles, I think, is somewhere around 13. So, something to think about. Wow, Greenland's really hit hard. Okay, time to evolve further. Let's further develop our ability to spread by blood-to-blood contact. Let's toss in rodents and birds as a potential vector. Because let's face it, birds don't need airports. And people are working on a cure. Isn't that interesting? Well, guess what? We're going to fight that. Let's go to abilities. Drug resistance 1. Drug resistance 2. Genetic hardening to decrease future research speed. Genetic reshuffle, requiring more work to develop a cure. Genetic hardening 2. Decrease speed even more. Genetic reshuffle 2. So I've made this disease almost as hard as possible to cure. That should slow things down a bit. Experimental cure for ignorance lethal. Found to be 100% lethal in humans. World Health Organization researchers say this setback will damage cure efforts. Sneezing symptom mutated. which will boost infectivity even more. Let's also develop the ability to thrive in hot environments, like so. Now we're really taking off in Africa. Sorry, guys. Tip, fight the cure. Well, I've been doing that. Necrosis symptom mutated. And keep in mind, this happened, I didn't even have to spend any DNA points. Most of my expenditures on DNA points have been on infectivity and transmission characteristics. This thing became lethal on its own without my direct intervention. And if we look here at the world, most of everyone is infected. We have a tiny sliver of people who have not yet been infected. Now, if you notice, there are no nations that haven't been infected. So this thing is truly worldwide. There are no healthy people left in the world. The last healthy person on the planet recently became infected with ignorance. Yup. So now all that really remains is to let the disease do its work and wipe out humanity. And I've got some DNA points to support that too, so let's go to symptoms, and let's choose total organ failure. And, oh, by the way, we just developed internal hemorrhaging as a potential symptom. So that will speed things up a bit. And hey, look, we've killed more than the Black Death. So, and the Spanish flu, how about that? I mean, we're just breaking all records here. And we've developed hemorrhagic shock. And the cure is 50% complete. Well, let's see if that happens. And we've killed more than smallpox. Now, as we continue along, I mean, it's happening. I mean, it's happening fast. People are placing their hopes on alternative medicines just such as ginkgo, tree extract, healing crystals, and snake oil. Use the distraction to spread unhindered. Now, I will say this. In the real world, there may be some utility for certain alternative medicines, and I do try to keep an open mind. But I also hold at the same time that these are best used in conjunction with modern medicine. That's my take on the situation. So you can see the world population is dropping fast. So it looks like we're on track to completely wipe out the human race here. Now, in going through all of this, I'd like to point out that in the real world, I'm not suggesting that anyone panic. I don't think that we need to close our borders, shut down everything, and hide under our beds. But I'm talking about this to encourage people to do some reading online and get the facts and realize that the benefits of vaccination far outweigh the risks. And the one study that talks about vaccines causing autism, I'm sorry folks, that was debunked. It was debunked by multiple venerated scientific research organizations. So I urge you politely to please keep this in mind, because if we didn't have people resisting vaccinations, then we wouldn't have had an outbreak of measles here in the United States. 20 years ago, measles was considered to have been eradicated. And here we are, like I said, over 600 cases here in the U.S. across 22 states. And that's just here in the United States. There are other outbreaks elsewhere. In fact, one of the outbreaks that led to a foothold here in the United States was actually a child came back to the United States after a trip to Israel. So meanwhile, victory. Ignorance has successfully eliminated all life on Earth. So here we go. The world has been destroyed. So there it is. There's my brief demonstration of Plague Incorporated, in which my virus wiped out the world in 688 days. So, about 2 years. So there it is. There's my demonstration of Plague Incorporated. Sorry to bring you such a grim topic, but once again, this is evidence of how computer games can actually be used as a teaching tool to explore a what-if scenario in the real world. So thank you very much for watching, and join me next time as I demonstrate more games. Eric Pearson, signing off.